Hi, we're live. This is John Firth. We're here with the first installment of our spring series of Firth and Friends, and I'm thrilled to have my friend Sandeep Purval come and talk to us about that all-important topic that nobody ever seems to be finished working at, which is better sales, and specifically in the B2B world. B2C, of course, is a completely different set of rules, and it's very heavily dependent on marketing. B2B sales is dependent on marketing, of course, but more in terms of getting a pipeline together and following that pipeline. So Sunny is a Sandler trainer. He's going to introduce himself a little bit more, but I would say my own experience of 35 years of selling either consulting or coaching sessions is you can never work too hard at this. There are a couple of simple tricks. I would say for me, the number one criteria for success is asking great questions, probing questions, interesting questions. You get that right, I would say 80% of it's done. But again, the pipeline management, which I consider my weakness, is equally important because you got to be able to follow up properly. You got to be systematic about what you're doing. You need to be working off lists and contacts that are made. And I personally find that actually the hardest part about it. So with that, I want to welcome Sunny. He will be introducing himself. We have a comment box. Feel free to ask anytime during this call, which will be about 40 minutes. Mention anything you want to comment on, or if you have a question, and I'll make sure we get that addressed. So, Sunny, welcome, and let's get started.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
Great. So, introduce yourself, and let's get started with our first topic, which is not that. Sorry, I just hit the wrong thing. Which is going to be the mindset part of this. So
let me give you just a brief introduction. I'm with a group called Sandler. I started out as a client. We're a sales training organization, and our job is to help people, companies, salespeople, create a better process so that they go win more deals. And I was with a company. We were called One Systems. We implemented this process, and what ended up happening was we sold for about 3-4x more than our competitors against free, utilizing this process. Caught the attention of an enterprise level company, and they ended up buying us. And as I've been a trainer, my job is just to help increase revenue inside of companies through sales. So
yeah. One thing I should say about you is there is a methodology called positive intelligence that was developed at Stanford Business School. It's, as it says, it's about getting yourself in the right mindset, being in the mindset. So I wanted to mention it in this section. And you have got still the highest score anybody's had on the assessment part of how positive and how mentally fit you are. A 90 out of 100. I'm not going to say how bad my score was, but it was by far not 90 out of 100. So you are the living example of someone who is living the proper mindset for being at least a salesperson.
I think the thing about sales is, right, like, am I allowed to use salty language, John?
Yes, please. It's got to be interesting.
We get beat to shit on a regular basis, whether that's through our prospecting activities or our qualifying activities, right? And so having a strong mindset is very key. And one of the things that I share with my clients is don't be emotionally attached to the outcome. The people who do very well in sales are not at all emotionally engaged. Okay.
And to a fault sometimes.
Yeah. And I think my client Lonnie said it best to me. He said, I used to tell my sales guys don't have commission breath, because if you have commission breath, your prospect's going to smell it and it's going to turn them off.
Oh my God. Yeah. I find salespeople for the most part are pretty transparent. You can tell, and this is why what you do is so important, is you need to be actually in the moment, living it. If you've got anything else going on in your head, I think at least I see it immediately. And commission breath, I would say, is probably the number one thing that a client can smell out really fast.
Definitely. I think the mindset should be, let me learn about this person, see how I can help.
And isn't this an interesting person that I would like to, also get to know? I think you get the help, but also get to know. Let me ask you a question. I think we've discussed this before. What is the single largest, according to a study done by my friend Ford Harding, who is the guru of rainmaking for professional services, the number one mindset or trait of someone who is successful at selling in projects, consulting projects in particular? What would you say? Optimism. In the sense that it's going to work out fine. And any bumps in the road are just simply what they are, bumps in the road. It's all part of your not being emotionally attached. You just move on.
Yeah, look, exactly. I think there's no deal out there that is perfect, right? I think there are certain tools that we can use as we're in a deal to help us create a higher outcome. But that doesn't mean that outcome is going to be a win, whether it's a loss, right? Like, it's just a lot of different things that may get in the way, such as, hey, maybe someone gets fired that you were dealing with, and now you got to start back over from scratch, out of your control. But you know what? If you have a tool to restart that, or maybe you leverage relationships inside of that org, then great, right? There's a sense of optimism to say, hey, I've got the right resources, the right tools in any given situation to move this deal forward.
So that's interesting you say that. So that, for me, that's not necessarily optimism. That's a mindset of I've always got to be prepared for something, or at least have the mindset of being agile and resilient.
Yeah.
So what other traits do you see in successful, and I'm speaking specifically of mindset. So, mindsets are usually taken on from experiences and other people who tell you things that stick with you, but also your own experiences and beliefs you have. So what are some of the non-helpful mindsets, and what are some of the most important? We've already talked about optimism, resilience, and agile. Well, what does one have to watch out for? You talked also about the commission breath. So having in the back of your mind commissions.
I think, like, we all have bills to pay, right? At the end of the day, yeah, that's for sure. But we also have a skill set that can get a lot better. And what I like to do when I'm working with a client is to help them understand how the brain works, because there's three parts. You have the lower part of your brain, that's where fight or flight lives. You have the middle part of your brain, that's where emotion lives. You have the upper part of your brain, and that's where complete certainty lives, right? We don't walk around in complete certainty on a daily basis. Some people do. We call those people assholes, right?
Yes, yeah. So self-assured and so confident that nothing can affect them.
So there's a technique that I show people that you can use to get into a mindset of certainty before you hop onto a call. And I call it olfactory anchoring. In fact, you'll see this. You'll see this. It's a little scent. And what I'll do about 2-3 minutes before a sales call is I'll sit here and I'll think about a victory that I once had that gets me pretty pumped up, right? Creates that positive frame of mind. I've attached it to the scent. Okay, and I feel this little tingle. And I use an affirmation, and my affirmation is this: look, I know nothing about this person. I'm going to learn about them. If I learn they have a problem and it's deep enough and they're willing to do something about it, we're probably going to go to a next step. And if not, I'm okay with that because I know how to prospect and I know how to get new opportunities. So there's that mindset of conviction that I put inside of myself before I even walk in.
Yeah, I would say what I usually do to get ready, and I love the thing with the scent and the whole memory recall and so forth, is to just remind myself that I've met really incredibly interesting people who haven't become clients. And I often say it to, look, I'm not sure whether this is something you're interested in discussing further, but I'll always find something interesting. I'm an inveterate learner, so I always start with the thought, at least I'm probably going to have an interesting half an hour, even if that first call doesn't yield anything. And that works for me. We have a comment here from Denise Martha Bachman. He says,
hey,
yes,
Denise.
we do. She says, yes, we do get beat to shit. Ha. So you have a friend in the audience.
Yeah. Hey, Denise.
Great. We're going to move on to the next part, which is as important, if not more important, is the actual doing. But I just want to remind everybody that we're here talking to Sunny Purwall about no pipeline, no sales, and no sales, no company. So as I said earlier, I work a lot with CEOs and business owners, and I think sometimes they forget how important the revenue part of their business is, specifically in the B2B sector. So Sunny, let's go on to the next part, the process. What is the process we're talking about?
So let me actually just share my screen here. Created a little something. Can you see my screen? No pipeline, no sales?
Uh-huh.
All right, so shameless activity. Look, those people in the audience, if you're not connected with me, go ahead and pull out your phone, open up your camera, and go ahead and scan my QR code, and we can be connected here on LinkedIn. By the way, anyone who's doing activities, you should be doing this. The way you do it is on mobile. If you go to the search tab, you'll see a little square, and you can actually get access to your QR code. But let me answer your question. The buyer-seller dance. I'm sorry, the process. A lot of what I see inside of organizations when I go there is that there's no clear defined sales process. But there is a process that I see, and that process usually results in a win rate of somewhere between 10-20%. I think lead generation is pretty standard.
But very hard. I have to say.
Doing things like networking, LinkedIn, maybe cold calls, warm calls, emails, certain activities to go get conversations. And I think what happens is when the rep finally gets a meeting, they get all excited about it. They show up to that meeting. They do a little bit of needs analysis, but then they go into this present mode of, let me show you my features and benefits and how great they are. Prospect says, yeah, that looks great. Maybe the sales rep attempts for a close. Hey, do you want to use it? Prospect says, hey, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Or follow up with me next week. It looks great. Next thing you know, the sales rep falls into chase mode and deals probably close somewhere between 10-20%. I've had thousands of conversations with people. This is the typical process that I see. What's familiar to you, John?
Yep. That's exactly, I think the video that I attached to the promo is using my dog, how she runs after squirrels. All she wants to do is play with them, but she does everything possible to get their attention, and they still won't play with her.
For sure. And so I think what happens is this process is controlled by someone, right? And I want to ask you that question. Who's this controlled by? The seller or the buyer?
When you go into close mode, you think you're in control of the situation, but you're not.
No.
Because you're literally out of control because you're so focused on one thing, you miss everything else that you need to understand and need to know and need to be reactive to.
It's the buyer who's in control, right? The buyer's in control there. When they say, hey, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. Reach out to me next week. And next thing you know, the sales rep is in chase mode. They lose that control. And so one of the things that we do is we show the people we work with how to control the interaction, but how to make the buyer feel like they're in control. And we rework that process to gather information versus giving information and setting clear next steps, because there's a responsibility of us as salespeople. The number one responsibility is to help your prospect make a great decision. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's good. I'm almost wanting to take notes here, but we will be recording this. Yeah, I would say that, that's part of the mindset. You've got to be in the right mindset. But I think you also have to recognize there's timing involved in the process. And if you screw up the timing, or you go into this chase and close mentality, chase and close already implies impatience, desperation, tunnel vision, all the things that are the wrong kind of mindsets and ways of being.
Definitely.
So for me, I think the most important thing is truly understanding them and giving the space that they need to make the decision. So we're going to get into prospecting and so forth in a second, but we're talking about individuals for the most part. Well, there are two kinds of B2B selling, as far as I'm concerned. There's the selling into an organization, like a consultant who's going to have eventually 100 people on, screwing in an ERP system, or you're going to have what I do now, which is person to person. I'm coaching CEOs and business owners. Yeah. I may get involved with their organizations. Of course, the main topic is their organization, but I don't interface with the organization. I interface with them. And so when you're working, the bigger the organization, the more complex the sales process is. Because as you just said a minute ago, you've got multiple people you probably should be talking to, especially if the buyer of the service or decision maker suddenly loses their job or gets sick and so forth. So I think your process is highly dependent on who you're selling to and how many people need to be involved.
I would agree. I think that, for instance, like enterprise level SaaS, that's a completely different sales process than, I don't know, a SaaS that's selling for $100, $200 a month. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Legal services is completely different from someone selling roofing services. So it's an understanding of how to utilize a process in specific industries in order to create that buy-in along the way to close for next steps and eventually close for deals.
Exactly. So again, we're here. I'm here with Sunny Purewall. We're talking about no pipeline, no sales, and no sales, no company. And we will go to our next topic, which is the topic of prospecting, which is not the same as, or this is the initial beginning of what we call a sales funnel, the top of the sales funnel, feeding your funnel.
So I think a common challenge that I see amongst reps or even entrepreneurs, consultants is that they're doing as much as they can, right? But it's not tracked.
And sometimes they're doing it too much, and doing what they can. Sometimes their can is overwhelming. They want to do. I think sometimes if a puppy and he's wagging his tail to get your attention, they're doing as much as they can. Is how I would phrase it sometimes.
Yeah. Or sometimes they say, "Hey, I'm going to block out today. I'm going to prospect, but I can't prospect tomorrow because I've got client stuff to do. I got admin stuff to do. I have meetings. Maybe I'll do it on Friday again." Prospecting isn't this event that happens once or twice a week. Prospecting happens every single day. And it's the time that we blocked on our calendar with a specific activity. And by the way, the best salespeople are prospecting while they sell. And what I mean by that is they're asking for referral introductions. Because there's a strong amount of belief. There's a belief set that what they provide into the marketplace offers such a high impact, and they just want to talk to as many people as they possibly can to see if they can help. Right? And with that attitude and that mindset, they have no challenge of asking for referrals.
That's very important. I'm glad you brought that up. It is a mindset. And in the moment, especially when you're a solopreneur like me, and you don't necessarily have somebody to pump up your energy and get you enthusiastic again, occasionally you go and you have a bad call, or a good prospect decided not to continue with the process, and suddenly you're in this doubt mode, even if it's a split second. And that you've got to be passionate about whatever you do all the time and believe in it. So no matter, you hear stories of people sitting next to somebody in an airplane, them becoming client. I was in the emergency room of a hospital nearby 3 or 4 years ago. With an accident, I came to. The CO came by because every afternoon, every time lunchtime, he and the senior executives went to different departments of the hospital. He was doing the emergency room. There I was, really with like just a loincloth, and I heard he was the CEO of the hospital. I went into sales mode, and what did you know? 6 months later, I had a project with him. Very cool. Even though I had just come out of I had blacked out. So that's one of my better stories. But yeah, you have to be ready to switch it on really at any moment, because you don't know who you're going to meet. You
don't know. You're right about that, and I think having a plan and a strategy is definitely helpful, but tracking your analytics is even more important, because the thing I measure in prospecting is a return on time, right? As investors, we're tracking what's your return on an investment. When it comes to prospecting, I'm measuring what is my return on time with this activity. If cold calling, for instance, is going to take me 4 hours and maybe I get 5 conversations and 2 appointments, but doing one-to-ones through networking is going to take me 90 minutes, and maybe I'll get like 5 referral introductions as a result. I start to measure that, and I'm like, where should I double down my time? Well, it makes sense, into the one-to-ones and the networking. A lot of people don't do that, though. They just do things the same way that they've been doing for year after year after year, and that's their belief set that it works. But you got to get open-minded to new strategies also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially when it comes to, let's talk for a second about LinkedIn prospecting, which, if again, in B2B sales, that's the number one social media tool that works, or should work in theory. That's a whole different dynamic, because that sometimes can take a lot of effort. To have a presence on LinkedIn, you should be posting regularly, or at least reposting. So you need to have a presence, but that's really pure marketing. It's not short-term activity. It's continuous. It's sort of like prospecting is, but then you actually need to be approaching people. Definitely. And there are a variety of approaches. You can do a cold. You can do, for example, people listening to this, at least if you signed up, I'll know who you are, and I could come and introduce myself and so forth. But that brings a whole new dynamic to the question of prospecting, because you may never ever, most likely you will never meet the person face to face that you're selling to. And second of all, it's just in some ways it's similar, because you do have to get into a routine, but I've outsourced that part, for example.
Okay. So when it comes to LinkedIn, a friendly shout out to Corey Warfield. Give Corey Warfield a follow, and Denise Bachman, who's in the chat. They've really figured this out. And a lot of what they figured out is, how do you utilize not just your content, but your engagement also to curate inbound leads without paying for ads? I have done it. I am a firm believer of it. And there is definitely a way to go do it that most salespeople don't realize how. I think a common misconception that salespeople have when they go into LinkedIn is that they're trying to approach the activity like it's cold calling or like it's emailing. Let me go send 100 cold DMs. No, don't. No one wants to get pitch slapped these days. Nobody does.
I know, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I mean, I still do it, but we work so hard on the scripts. And actually the mindset, the way I'm working with a coach and then he has somebody who's actually doing the work is, you first of all got to make it sound intelligent what you're writing. I mean, too much, and it's got to sound tailored. So what you do if you're going to do the cold slap or whatever you call it, cold pitch slap, is you got to take a moment to look at their profile and see, aha, they just posted on, better coaching techniques or, the need to grow sales or something. You can highlight that in your approach. That at least makes it look like you've got some idea who you've approached, so it doesn't look totally cold. But there's so much work that goes into getting the scripts right for the person who's going to do the work for you. But it does work. It's just it's a numbers game. I would say I get one lead out of maybe every 20, 25 approaches.
So here's
and that's just the top of the fire.
Let me give you a tip. Can I give you a tip?
Sure, please.
So one thing that I show people to do, and I've learned this through Corey also, is go engage through the comment section. Write value in the comment section. They're going to see that. They're going to see your face. And if you consistently write value, maybe 2-3 times, and you go inside of the DM, don't try and pitch slap someone in the DM at that time.
Right.
Be human at first. Connect to that post, but then start to use the magic tool that we're going to talk about here pretty soon, which is asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. And there's many different approaches. And I'm about to, in fact, I talked to my coach just now, and we're going to shift more to following up with people who clearly have looked at my profile or have attended an event and so forth. But it does yield results. It's just a lot of work to get the results.
Definitely.
Definitely. So, okay, excellent. Just a reminder that you're here watching No Pipeline, No Sales, No Company. And I'm here with Sonny Purewall, and he's giving me all sorts of tips. And if I didn't make a lot of noise on my microphone writing notes and didn't have a video, I would be sitting here taking lots and lots of copious notes. So let's move on to the next section. And that's what I call persuasion and seduction. This is when the rubber hits the road. So tell us about this.
Take my pants off, John. Listen, not that kind of LinkedIn Live.
Okay, no. Oh, that's right. No, it's not that kind of LinkedIn Live. In fact, I don't think there's any LinkedIn Live like this.
Just kidding. When I think about persuasion and seduction, I'm thinking about what kind of information am I getting from a prospect, and that all comes through asking great questions. And there's a couple ways to ask questions, and my favorite to open up calls are utilizing open-ended questions, using questions like what, how, when, tell me, right? In the beginning of that question. But as we get closer towards the end of the sales call, it's mostly closed-ended questions. Is that something you would want to commit to? Is that something you would want to learn? Is changing your existing sales process or is fixing your existing sales process something that you'd like to work on, right? To get a yes or no. So that's usually how I calibrate my question strategy. I move and I start with open, and then I close with close-ended.
So I have a new tip that my coach taught me about 6 weeks ago. He said in every initial sales call, when you're actually talking to a person, not necessarily texting them, is everybody wants a chance to say no. It's a natural human reaction. It's because I don't know you. They'll say no. So you generate a false no. And you do that by starting out, and it really works for me because my beginnings of sales calls are usually a mess because I never really had a technique. This is surefire. It works every time. You ask the question, you start with, do you mind if I ask you, do you mind if I ask you? In their mind, they go, no, I don't mind that. So you've already, in their mind, they've said no, but you've also given yourself the permission to ask questions. So do you mind me if I ask? Often I'll start with, do you mind if I ask you why you talk to me? I mean, you must get lots of messages. Why why did you decide you want to talk to me? And that's usually kicks it off and it just keeps going. But I've generated a false no. So they already feel like they've had the opportunity, even if they haven't verbalized it, to say, do the objection thing.
But it's funny that you say that. I didn't think about it, because I'll start my sales call actually with a trap question. Hey, do you know anything about what it is that I do? It doesn't matter if you say no or yes to that question. Yeah, aren't you with Sandler? You do a little bit of sales training, or no, not really. Hey, let me give you a little overview. And I've got a technique called the commercial. And this commercial gets me right into my pain and question strategy. Well, let's say you're a consultant, right? I might say something like, hey, well, I saw you're a consultant. I do a lot of work with consultants. I see some common struggles, such as, hey, maybe you're prospecting, but you're not getting enough new meetings, and that's frustrating. Or maybe you're concerned that you're getting a lot of meetings, but you're giving a lot of free consulting, and you're not converting a lot. Closing's like 10, 20%. So when you think of sales right now, what are you struggling with? You see how I walked you from that trap question into now pain question?
That's really good. That's really good. I like that because I even though I've sort of trained in LinkedIn work, which is what we're really talking about, is your first cold call, which in my case is somebody who's responded positively in LinkedIn and wants to call, is you don't want to sound like you're interrogating someone. And I in particular, I'm very curious. So I love asking people stuff, but I do know it can look like I'm interrogating someone depending on my mindset and where they are. And so I sometimes hesitate to start just right off with questions. What I love about it, and yet Vistage actually taught us to not talk about us and Vistage as little as possible for the first 5 or 10 minutes, get them talking. But what I like about it is you just dangle a little bit of who you are as a lead in, as you said, to being able to ask them questions and get to their pain points much faster. So I like that. As I said, there are lots of techniques we can use to get the conversation going. And these are not just techniques for selling. These are also techniques for when you have to network, where you simply network, say, if you're looking for a job. I have a client who's looking for a job, and we're teaching her basically Sandler methodology to be able to go in and network and not look, for moments where she's literally networking and not actually interviewing.
Definitely. I think you had mentioned one thing as you were talking about making it an interrogation, right? And I think the challenge that people have when they learn how to ask questions is that they don't learn that asking questions is only 50%. The other 50% is the ability to listen. And I'll tell you what, you sell with your ears, but you buy with your mouth.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah. It's if you don't listen, it's even more insulting. It's almost like don't ask questions if you're not willing to listen to the answers. And I think the best way to signal that you're listening is to respond in kind or respond appropriately. Now, the danger with doing that is, and I've been a victim of this, is you start formulating a response. And the client can tell that you're suddenly a little bit further away from them. You're not over on their side because you're sitting there going, all right, what's the smartest thing I can say right now? And at least as a consultant, that was always in the back of my head. And as we discussed, anything that goes on in my head will be transparent. Somebody will pick up on something. So I try to be very much in the moment. But you have to be listening.
Important thing. No, Marcus Kauke taught me that. He told me that being present, and he's a sales trainer himself, highly recommend. Being present is one of the best things you can do as a salesperson, but more importantly, being able to repeat, restate, rephrase, summarize what it is that you just said before you ask that next question, to say, hey, John, I heard you. I understand what you're saying, but let me ask you this. To keep the conversation controlled and going is super important. That's how you showcase your listening skills.
Absolutely. One of the most powerful, I was sold to once about, 25 years ago, when I was a little bit in career flux, uncertain. I had done my MBA. I was a consultant. I wasn't so sure I wanted to continue. So I went to, I forget one of the outplacement services that would take anybody in if you needed help. So the salesperson was brilliant. And I knew what she was doing the whole time, asked lots of questions. And then she repeated everything I had told her. And even though I was sort of aware of what she was doing, it felt so good. It just felt like it finally got me. And, I have a home and I'm going to be better. And I bought on the spot. And I know they priced aggressively because I was like, yeah, sign me up, sign me up, sign me up. And she said, well, I'll come back in a second. I knew she was going to figure out what's the most I can get out of this guy. But she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So we have a couple of, Denise says she
Robin.
loves Marcus Cauchi. And Robin Miller says, great insight, Sonny. It's something we said about 4 minutes ago.
Thank you, Robin. Good to
Thank
see
you for making comments. So we'll move on to the next section. We're here with Sonny Purewal, and this is no pipeline, no sales, and no sales, no company. So the all-important closing the deal.
So closing, where does closing happen? In our process, closing actually happens in the beginning. It doesn't happen at the end.
Okay.
We use something called an upfront contract. And how do you use it? Well, everyone has an agenda when they get into a call, right? You may have an agenda with my prospect. I might have an agenda. Let's discuss that.
Well, you definitely have an agenda. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
I might want to ask you a bunch of different questions, so why don't I get permission for that up front? But we might discover one of two outcomes from today. You might feel, let's just imagine, you might feel I'm not a good fit at all, bar none, and you don't want to meet with me again. John, I want you to tell me if you feel that way. Okay? I'm going to give you that out, and here's why. Because pressure goes down and trust goes up. So if I ask you anything, you have no problem sharing information with me because you don't feel like I'm trying to grab some money from your wallet, right? But what I also need to do is I also need to help you understand what is that next step if we find a reason to do some business. Now that depends. It depends on what you're selling, okay? If you're selling SaaS, for example, well, that next step is going to be, hey, look, John, let's imagine we find a reason to do some business. I don't think that means we're going to sign a contract today. But what it does mean is we're probably going to pull out our calendars, and I'm going to take you through a customized demo that might solve some challenges we discuss. Sound reasonable?
Yep.
You're going to say yes.
Right.
Okay. So what's the next step going to be? Well, at the end of the call, I'm going to say, hey, John, I think it makes sense for us to schedule that demo. What do you think? You're going to say, yeah. Pull out your calendar. How does Tuesday at 4 o'clock work? No, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. Okay. A lot of times people will leave this call, but here's the thing. People don't know how to buy from us. Buying this is easy. You go to a store, you hand them your credit card, you buy it. That's called demand fulfillment. Most of us are in the business of demand generation, where people don't wake up and they're like, Jesus, I need some executive leadership.
Exactly.
I need some executive leadership coaching. Jesus Christ, let me go get some.
I go even further. If you're thinking, God, I really need leadership coaching, chances are you're not going to be a great client. You're going to be kind of desperate and maybe even need some other kind of help. That's what I've discovered, is that it's actually what I always say. There's the initial buyer. There's the skeptic and there's the cynic. You don't want cynics because they'll never buy, but the skeptics are the guys you want to be able to get, because they're willing to go through the process. They're skeptical, but they're going to listen and pay attention. And when they make the decision, it's a final decision. The first, tell me where to sign, it means they're not paying attention. And you get those clients. Next thing you know, then the doubts come, and then you got a problem on your hands.
Anyone that's ever came to me like that, I always say, hey, let's just tap the brakes for a moment. Let me ask you a couple questions about your current strategy now, just to see how I can help. That's a mini contract right there, right?
Right. Exactly. I've never had good experience with people who are in the first meeting, where do I sign? They've stayed as clients, but they've turned out to be very problematic clients.
Wow. That's interesting insight.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to end with is, as you end a call, define and agree on the outcomes of that call. Getting back to that SaaS example, hey, let's imagine you look at the demo. You think it's the dumbest software you've ever seen in your life. Will you tell me at the end? Yeah, I will. Okay, great. And if I didn't think this software was a good fit for you, I wouldn't have even taken you into the call. But let's pretend you love the software. You see how it can solve pain. And you're like, Sonny, John, I want to use that software. The next step's simple. We'll talk about the investment. We'll come to an agreement. I'll send you a contract. You sign it. You get it back to me. We're in business. Sound reasonable?
Right.
It's having that clarity and understanding of how do you buy from me. And let me tell you before we walk onto that call, so you know exactly what decision is going to happen when we walk on that call.
So what's interesting, we have been using the example of SaaS platform. Now, if I take it to the example, almost the exact opposite, which is personal coaching.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily do that. For one thing, so much of this is discovery, and you have to let the process unfold. My coach actually says, be very careful about putting in too much of a process too early, because you'll look like you're selling. as opposed to, let me just get to know you. Oh, great conversation. I'd love to follow up. Now, I have a process that I got from Vistage, but I've learned now that really you shouldn't be that specific about the process, because that begins to feel like selling as opposed to getting to know you.
Sales is a dance, right?
Hence seduction and persuasion, persuasion and seduction.
Yeah, sales is a dance, and it's the one who leads the dance is usually the one that wins. It's all about getting information and clarity on next steps. That's really all it's about. It's moving from one step to another step with an agreed outcome, another step, and another step. If I'm selling coaching services, I have a strategy, right? Whatever problem it is that we discussed, I'll have a strategy that I'm going to take you through to solve that. Look, I'm going to show you the strategy. If you hate the strategy, just tell me at the end. Sound good? Yeah, that sounds good. If you love the strategy and you want to hire me, here's all we need to do. We got to talk about the investment. We'll come to an agreement. I'll send you a contract to sign, and we'll schedule our first training call. Sound reasonable?
Interesting, because what you're really talking about is, I would phrase it as, you got to have the balls and the courage to do that, because there's always a possibility that somebody's going to tell you, you know what, this actually sucks. You got to be able to, you got to be willing to be rejected if you do that. There's always a possibility you get rejected, and therefore a lot of people, actually me included, don't go that far because we're afraid of hearing the word no, or I'm not interested, or something.
But remember the theme of the conversation from the beginning: unemotional attachment to outcome.
Yes, right. I'm too emotionally attached, as I think a lot of people are. Now we're going to come to the last section. Again, we're here with Sunny Purewal. We're talking about no pipeline, no sales, no company. At the end of this, we'll have our information, our contact information up, so you can see how to get in touch with us. But now we're going to talk about, we did talk about it. So that's good, because we're coming on the 40-minute mark. So let's say people listen to this and they got a wealth of ideas but don't know where to start. What would you say? Yeah.
What I would suggest is, on my profile, okay? On my profile, there's this featured section right here. Can you see it, John?
Yes, I can.
Go there.
Discover yourself.
Click that link and discover your sales strengths. That's going to tell you a blueprint of, what are you really good at? What are some areas of improvement? That's a good first step, in my opinion. Excellent.
I love assessments. In fact, I'm going to go do that right now. Take that assessment. And if you could do me the favor, and in the comment section, put the URL. So people will keep this up for a little while, so people can actually go to that assessment. I'm going to do that right after we're finished. I say hello to Carlos. He's joined us.
Hey, Carlos.
He's one of the coaches with me in the Executives Over 50 program, where a lot of our people who are in that program have to go out and sell themselves, which is what prompted a little bit why I wanted to get this going, this conversation, because, for many people, especially if they were consultants or something else, and they have to get themselves another job, or they decide to hang out their own shingle, they have to be able to sell, and they have to be able to sell confidently and without any of this, what you call the, what was it? The breath, the commission breath, without commission breath, and just be natural and helpful and wanting to be there on the other side with the other person. So I don't know if you got that up into the comment box.
Yeah, for some reason I can't put it into the comment section. That's why I sent it to you.
Okay. So what let's see if I can put it in. Gotta get to you sent it to my Gmail account.
No, I just sent it in private chat.
Oh, okay, good. Let me come back. Private chat. There it is. Okay, let me see if this works.
If not, it's unlocksales.scoreapp.com.
Yeah, this should work. Let's see. Goes through. There it is. So there's the link.
Wonderful.
We'll leave the screen up for another 30 seconds. So what would you say is the number one thing people should take away from this? I would say for me, it's really the mindset. It's understanding. It's about being there with the other person, about enjoying the interaction. I will say one thing though, and I meant to bring this up about 2 minutes ago, is there's danger also of wanting to just get to know the person and be there for them and ask questions, of becoming what we call a professional visitor. So in terms of closing, you have to remember you do have to close the sale at some point. And I find too often, especially us trusted advisors, will get so into this, wow, he's really listening to me and I'm asking him great questions. What a wonderful relationship. You forget you have to close it. And I have one friend in particular that he's very successful, but there are a whole bunch of relationships he hasn't closed, and I know he could, but he becomes this professional visitor, which is great. People love professional visitors, but you don't necessarily get clients out of that. Anything you want to say about that in closing?
I do, yes. So there's something that we test for in our assessments when we're working with reps or teams, and what you're basically saying is those type of individuals have what's called a high need for approval. They need approval from the prospect, and I'll tell you what, you only need approval from one person in life. That's your mom. Okay, that's your mom.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only person you need approval from. Okay, and most importantly, yourself. And it all just falters back to no emotional attachment to the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely don't care when I walk into a sales meeting. Okay, I don't.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
these people. They're complete strangers. All I know is I know how to get information, and I genuinely know I can help these people if I find that there's some sort of problem. But I have no need for someone to like me. Don't care. It's not in my mindset. I don't have a self-serving mindset when I walk into a sales call. My mindset is, let me learn about this person. Let me see how I may be able to help them. If I can't, I'm out of there. If I can, great, we'll move to the next step. That's all it is.
Or if they're not in a position to buy the service for whatever reason. There are a lot of people it's not on the radar screen, and anything you can do, anything you try to get it on the radar screen isn't working for whatever reason. In my case, it's usually a belief they have about cost and productivity, and this is extra time and money, and so forth. But that's great. I think as a closing statement, that's excellent, which is you have a job to do, which is to sell, and you're either going to do your job professionally or you're not. And that means not being emotionally attached, which goes for really anything in business. You have to be able to communicate and bond with people, but it doesn't have to be an emotional bond in that sense. It has to be always on a professional level, which means at some point, sorry, I have a job to do, and I'm either going to be able to do it with you or not. And if not, I'd rather know sooner than later. That's the way I would put it.
So if you think about that, right, what you're saying about bonding with people, that happens on a deeper level as human beings. It happens through our body language, our tonality, and the words that we use.
Yep.
That's something I share with people, because if I have a 30-minute meeting with you, I can't spend 20 of those minutes talking about the books on the shelf behind you. I can't do that.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe spend a minute or two. Hey, what book are you reading right now? Oh, that's great. Hey, let's talk about books later if we have more time. But let's dive in. Let me ask you a couple questions about your business.
Right. I would go so far as to say is serious people, the people who, if they were to buy from you, would take it serious, would do what they're supposed to do. Because in coaching, you can get people who have no clue and haven't bothered really thinking through it. Is they're going to see it quickly. They're going to say, this guy's a professional and he's not just wasting my time. So there's a lot to be said for the signal you send when you act professionally. You don't get emotionally attached. So anyways, time is up. We're actually a little bit over, but that's fine. I hope people were able to copy the link. What I'll probably do is at least anybody who registered for the event, I will approach them and give them the link, because I think that's great. I love assessments, and I'm going to do it as soon as we finish this call. Wonderful. So thank you, Sonny. Thank you for everybody who listened. And we hopefully will see you at another First and Friends every Wednesday at 12 noon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.